But we begin today with an in-depth conversation about this right here. This is a drug called Ivermectin. It's been around for decades. It's a very effective anti-parasitic drug in both humans and animals. But over the past year, it's become embroiled in the COVID-19 culture war. It's been embraced by some in the anti-vax movement as a breakthrough drug to treat and prevent COVID-19, while others have vilified it as snake oil. To be clear, health officials and most doctors do not recommend using ivermectin to prevent or treat COVID-19. Now that's due to a lack of clear evidence about whether the drug would have any effect against the virus. But that could soon change. A clinical trial is about to get underway here in El Paso that could shed light on the efficacy of this controversial drug.
I should point out, ivermectin is only one of 3 medications we have in this Active 6 trial. And there are more drugs coming.
That's Dr. Ed Michelson, and he's talking about Active 6. It's a nationwide study that includes ivermectin. It's part of a $1.7 million grant that was awarded to Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center, El Paso, by the National Institutes of Health.
So we know that some people may have a strong opinion, positive or negative, regarding ivermectin, but fortunately we can have a discussion with each participant and we can explain the 3 different options we have today, one of which is ivermectin.
Isn't the idea here that, as you mentioned, when it comes to therapeutics, the situation with a novel illness like COVID-19 is that you need clinical trials. You need controlled clinical trials, and then you achieve a data point that you can apply to the real world.
Correct. And so this is happening at warp speed, if you will. Many investigators, including us here in El Paso, are jumping on different drugs that look promising, and they're promising because of effects in the lab, because of small studies or small publications that make it look like a drug might be beneficial. So all of us are jumping on every potential new drug to test them to see if they actually work. But the key here is you have to do real research. You can't just go on the internet and hear about someone's great aunt who felt better after she took X. The gold standard really is prospective randomized trials, and that is what Active 6 is. It is a prospective randomized trial, and it's going to involve tens of thousands of patients because some of these medications have such a small effect. And this is where ivermectin comes in. I think the effect may be positive, but it may be such a small effect that you have to study thousands of people in a rigorous way to identify, does it help? Are there subsets of patients where it works and others where it doesn't work? That could be an issue of sex, of age, of duration of illness before you start taking it. There's lots of variables. So this is where we need real prospective research in order to come up with good answers.
What we're talking about is using something off-label, right? And you're talking about other possibilities that were explored off-label.
Active 6 is exactly that. Okay. So Active 6 is a series of drug studies looking at existing FDA-approved medications, but approved for something else, to see if they have benefit in COVID-19. It's a little bit faster way of coming up with new treatments than novel medications that have no FDA approval. Active 6, by taking existing drugs that look like they might be beneficial, you bypass those early steps. Is it a safe drug? What is a safe dose of the drug? Because we know that. But we're trying to see whether it adds value in COVID-19 and it may help.
And that's just what researchers do. You try to arrive at a point where you can have some data that you can apply to real-world applications.
That's right. Not only that, but we share it very quickly as well. So this is what's called an adaptive trial. As we're enrolling patients, they have a 50-50 chance of getting the active drug or a placebo. One arm is ivermectin. There's 2 other arms currently. One is a drug called fluvoxamine, and this is a psychiatric drug, actually. It's taken by patients with certain psychiatric conditions, but in small studies, it looks like it helps patients stay out of the hospital if they get COVID-19. And the third drug is an inhaled steroid that's used by patients who have asthma, who have COPD, emphysema. There's some evidence that this may also help reduce the damage to the lung that COVID-19 causes. So as we are enrolling patients, we will not know which patients get the real drug and which ones get a matched placebo. There is, however, a data safety committee that'll be monitoring these patients. As soon as they see a positive result, if it's positive, they will stop enrolling in that arm and they'll bring in a new drug. By the same token, if a drug does not work, if it's pretty clear that the placebo group and the active study groups have no difference in outcome, they will drop those medications as well and bring in new ones. By the time we're done over a roughly 2-year period, I think we'll end up having studied 8 or 9 different medications, but these are the first 3.
8 or 9 medications over 2 years. That might not seem like an immediate answer to what people want, right? Which is often that magic bullet, right? But that's what it takes?
Often that's what it takes, unless you have a drug that's remarkably effective. So let's look at the vaccines. Vaccines were studied in a much more compressed period of time, and we had EUA approval for our first vaccines in less than 1 year.
Right.
But that's because they were so effective. It was very easy to show benefit from the new vaccines, and we also had safety data to go with them.
You know, when it comes to encouraging people to take part, which is what we're discussing, some people might still have reservations about when they hear ivermectin because, I mean, initially it was, I think, erroneously reported in many places that it was strictly a medication for animals, right? Like, I think the FDA even put out a snarky tweet when this was first happening, people who were self-medicating. So how do you communicate to people that A, it is a medication that's been around, and B, it's not something that should be feared, even though it's so hotly debated?
Do you know, Robert, there's a number of medications that we use that work well in humans that also have uses in animals. One of the big problems, I think, with ivermectin is the dosing. And we saw this with hydroxychloroquine. People were taking hydroxychloroquine at highly toxic doses and getting very sick. I think in that situation, it was hydroxychloroquine for fish tanks, for people's aquaria. The doses were super high, and we know of several deaths, unfortunately, when people were trying to treat themselves. In the case of ivermectin, we are using human pill form. We are adjusting the dose for the individual's weight. If they choose ivermectin in Active 6, we will ask them their weight, and we will adjust the dose based on their weight. Now, obviously, horses weigh a whole lot more than humans, and I don't think people understood the appropriate dosing, and they were probably unknowingly taking way too much of the drug. So the medication we're using in this trial is human approved, FDA approved pills of ivermectin, and we will individualize the dose based on each patient's weight. And for those people who don't want any part of it, we have 2 other options. So when they call us, if they have strong feelings against ivermectin, we will discuss one of the other 2 medications that are available. But I really do hope people take advantage of this. You know, I want to see more clinical research come to El Paso. This is a way that we can get at the cutting edge of treatment, that patients in our community can take advantage of new treatments. We will be the only center in the country doing cromolyn for admitted patients. And my hope is if we show evidence of success that we will port that out to all the other Active 6 sites so that we can get some super large trials to see if that is a good treatment. But that would be something that started right here in El Paso.
Doctor, thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to meet with you.
Michelson says he hopes to start enrolling local patients in the clinical trial by the end of the month.